already started?
Yup.
Oh, we're live?
I did your job for you.
All right, I'll take it.
Yeah, we just
You
hit record
get
and
right
go.
to it.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of like intros and that kind of thing.
I don't like intros, so
Move that just a little bit for you. Cool. Yeah, I want it to be more of like a fly on the wall kind of experience rather than some cookie cutter kind of thing. So just doing this. So it's like 11:15. Probably get a hard stop in about an hour if that works for you.
okay.
Cool. I probably look like a goofball because I got two things on my wrist now. Used to just be the watch, but now I got a Whoop. Are you familiar with Whoop?
Yes.
Have you seen these?
Yes, very similar to the Aura ring, which is what
Oh,
I have.
yeah. So why'd you go with the ring?
It was a present,
Okay.
so it was a gift, but really I was very interested in the sleep component.
So what are you learning?
I got it in 2018, so back
Oh, wow.
then
Okay.
I was not doing well mentally. So I
Okay.
had clinical depression, anxiety, I was suicidal. And what was interesting is that it would check my sleep and it would show that I was getting like 4 hours of REM sleep. And that's where you're dreaming and processing everything of the day. And then I was getting like 10 minutes of deep sleep. And that's where you're recovering, getting your muscles to grow, all that good stuff. And I was getting REM before deep, and it should be the opposite. And
So what do you do
to
to
switch
flip
it,
Yeah, to correct it.
I think it was just a process of getting my mental health fixed, or not fixed, but improve it by
Sure.
many things. I mean, a lot of factors went into it, but walking in nature, getting my resting heart rate to come down, because when you have anxiety, your heart rate usually goes up. So if you can just bring your resting at a lower rate, then you're less likely to feel anxious.
Makes sense.
Meditation.
Yeah, I'm still learning all of the things. So
Therapy.
meditation. Okay.
Yeah, lots of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm starting to figure it out. This morning, I think I'm at 80% recovery, which is good because yesterday I think it was 24%.
Oh, wow.
Pretty bad. Yeah.
How much
'Cause-
sleep did you get that night?
Like 6 hours.
Yeah, that makes
But it
sense.
just, weird days and traveling and not really being in a normal routine, eating different kind of foods, staying up later to get work done, that kind of thing. So it really is kind of interesting to see all of that data coming from something sitting on my wrist, I've been really kind of fascinated myself, just knowing that like there are days when I wake up and I just feel like, right? Everybody has those days, but it's like, well, why? Is there anything I can do to actually understand maybe what I'm putting in that's making that the output?
Yeah.
And so I can
that's why
control it
this
and
is
change it.
important, because you can see your patterns and how they impact you. So
Yeah.
you see how travel impacts you. And a lot of times when people get things like is it Whoop? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yep.
Or the Aura ring, they see how much travel impacts their recovery and their ability to sleep well. So then they're wanting to travel less. Or you see how alcohol impacts your sleep. So a lot of people, when they get the Aura ring, they actually stop drinking because they notice that their resting heart rate goes up when they drink, their temperature goes up when they drink, their score goes down. So you start to see all these different things that you do every day, like eating late is another one, working out too late.
Yeah, I've noticed eating right before bed, like the stress level is pretty high. It stays high for a couple hours.
Yeah, it
It's
keeps
like I'm
your
just
heart rate
laying
up.
here doing nothing. It's like, why am I, like, what does stress mean in that scenario? And I guess digestion, other things are going on, right?
Yeah, you're digesting your food instead of working on sleep.
Yeah.
So ideally, you want to eat 2 hours before bed. I don't do that. And I notice a difference.
I was going to say I'm snacking like right before I go to bed. Usually it's because like for breakfast, I typically just do like protein shakes or like what is it, Profi or whatever? You put protein powder in coffee. You ever
I haven't
do
heard that
Okay.
term, no, but I've had protein in my
I don't call
coffee.
it that, but people call it that. But yeah, I do that in the morning and then something for lunch, something for dinner, and I still haven't hit my calories for the day because I track them in MyFitnessPal. And so usually before bed, my stomach's growling and I'm like, this is not going to work. So now I'm learning I need to change something. I need to figure it out. I don't know what that's going to be, but
Yeah, and I don't know
We'll
what would
see.
be more ideal? Eat before bed to get all your protein, especially protein, not just calories,
Yeah.
or not eat before bed and not get enough protein? I think I'd be biased towards get your protein.
Yeah, I think it's like 272 grams of protein or something that I'm supposed to have, and I'm like, that is just
270?
yeah, like 272. I'm like, that's a wild number to me.
Oh, are you doing 1 gram per pound?
I forget the calculation, to be honest with you. It's been a while since I did it, but what is it? First of all, can we just say I said 272 and you were like, 1 gram per pound, right? Like I weigh 272. I don't weigh 272.
I didn't think so.
Now I forget what the calculation was. But yeah, it came out to 272.
Okay.
And I was like, that is a really
I would say that's
high
a little
number.
much.
Yeah, I mean, like chicken and broccoli, chicken, protein, chicken. It's still like halfway there.
Yeah, we
Oh my
suggest 1
God.
gram per, or 1
That's
gram
crazy.
per ideal weight.
Okay. Per ideal weight.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah, 'cause
so
if
why
you're-
not where you are? Why where you want to go?
Because let's say if you weigh 250 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be really hard to get 250 pounds or 250 grams of
Yeah.
protein.
Yeah, I'm
So,
figuring that out.
Yeah, I would suggest 1 gram per pound.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, doing the calorie, well, not really calorie counting, but the macro counting and sort of focusing on protein, it's been really helpful for me as far as like being mindful of what I'm eating. Obviously, like mindfulness for you is a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried paleo and all the other kind of things to stay fit or to lose a little bit, and none of it ever really stuck. And I realized that all these diets and everything are essentially the same diet, just told in a different way with different ways of getting there. But something about the unlock with paying attention to protein has been important and beneficial to me. So I'm curious from your perspective, why is that trend taking off right now?
I'm glad it's taking off because I truly believe it's one reason why we have so many yo-yo dieters, because they don't get enough protein. So then they can't stick to any type of diet, and it's not sustainable because they're always hungry. And
so the protein obviously fills you up.
yeah, it's the most satiating macronutrient that we have. And so a lot of people say, when I tell them you need to increase your protein, they say what I really need to do is cut out the sugar and cut out the carbs. But what they don't realize is if you get enough protein, then you won't overdo it on the sugar and the carbs because you're going to be full.
You won't even want it, right?
Yeah, like I can keep ice cream in the freezer. I can't keep cheese. I'll eat that. Or chips, but I can keep sweets in the house. And if I'm getting my protein, I don't feel like I want it.
So is it really that we need that much protein, or are we just using it as a mechanism to calm down the carbs and everything else that we want?
I would say we need it
Okay.
to maintain skeletal muscle, which is our number one goal with our gym. We're very biased towards getting people to gain and maintain their muscle. And in order for you to maintain your muscle, you need protein. You need the amino acids in the protein. And I think what we're seeing now in society is that people are under eating protein. They're not strength training. They're not pushing their bodies. And I understand why they don't push their bodies, because they're in pain and no one's ever taught them how to push in a safe way.
Sure.
And so now we're seeing people in their 50s and 60s losing muscle at a very fast rate. And then they end up in assisted living at a much younger age than they should, because they've lost all of their physical independence because they're not strong. They're very weak.
That makes sense.
And so I even wrote an article for my clients. It was kind of morbid, but it was titled "Avoiding a Slow, Miserable Death."
Got my attention now,
Passed it out to
obviously.
everybody.
They're like, yeah, this is
morbid.
great. Really positive. No.
And I wanted to give them another purpose of strength training. Like it just doesn't have to be about looking good or having a six pack. It's about aging with quality. And I want people to have a fulfilling life after retirement. But what ends up happening is people don't strength train, don't have enough protein, they lose a lot of muscle, and by the time they retire, their life, in my opinion, is not worth living. They can't go anywhere. They
Yeah.
can't keep up with their family, so they get left behind on trips. And that was all written in the article. And it's like slowly you start to lose your ability to connect with people. And then it gets to the point where you can only make it from your couch to the kitchen, to the bathroom, and that's
Right.
your life. And then you end up in assisted living,
Yeah.
like 10 years before you should.
Mm.
And then you die a slow, miserable death versus dying quickly, having a full life, being
Yeah,
able to do
right.
it. And then you die, you go to assisted living or nursing home and you die a year later. But what happens now
Rather
is
than being 20 years at a,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
or
like
whatever
I've
it is. Yeah.
seen my grandma, she's been dying for 15 years. And it's been very sad to see that her life quality has gone so low that she doesn't want to live anymore.
And I'd imagine at that kind of age, it's really tough to reverse that.
It is. It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's never late. It's never too late to start strength training, but you do get to the point like when you're 80, 85, even like
Yeah.
late 70s, where you can reverse some stuff. You can build muscle, but you do want to get to it in your 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Yeah. So what do you recommend if somebody's like, strength training, to your point earlier, most people probably view that as, oh yeah, I'm trying to, bulk up or something, is also, to your point, that's not really the point. Just to maintain.
Yeah,
So
maintain and gain.
what can you do to maintain, if you like the way you look or you're not interested in bulking up, like what can you do to actually strength train but not put on more muscle? Does that make sense?
Yeah, or not
Or
bulking up.
Yeah.
One is getting them to get past the belief that pushing your body hard is going to bulk you up. Like I can deadlift over 200 pounds for reps, and I don't look like I work out much. Like I didn't get bulky. So you would have to work really, really hard and probably take drugs and get over 200 grams of protein to actually like put on size.
Got it.
And that's a belief that people don't get, or they think if I train hard, I'm going to look like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And that's not really the case. So what people need to realize is if you want to maintain muscle or gain enough muscle, not bulk up, you have to work really hard. You have to push the limits and go to failure. However, our approach is you start very slow. So we have this big belief, and we're very biased of maintaining muscle, gaining muscle. People have to learn to push their bodies hard. They have to learn to go to failure. So doing a weight until you can't do it anymore. Like that's very important. But I believe we need to start people very slow, where exercise is not hard in the beginning. You're just learning the moves and the
So what does that look like?
It kind of looks like yoga. And that's how I explain it, or Pilates. Like that's at the level that we start people with. Just learn the basics, build tolerance, like physically and mentally, because when you haven't done something, your perception of working hard is much greater than what it actually is.
Right.
So if you've never taken a run or you've never pushed your body hard, your body starts to increase the temperature, your heart rate starts to go up. And if you've never felt that, you're like, oh shit, this is bad.
Yeah.
And so people's mental tolerance to exercise is very low. So what I like to do is kind of meet people where they're at, get them to feel safe in their body, confident in their body, and then slowly build tolerance to strength training.
That makes sense.
And then get to the point where they're pushing their bodies hard.
Yeah.
But to get to that, you have to build tolerance and you have to get enough protein.
Yeah, you were talking about like temperature going up, breathing hard, all that kind of stuff. When I was younger especially, but I just didn't know the difference between, am I out of shape? Do I have asthma? Do I have something else going on?
Yeah, exactly.
And recently found out and got diagnosed with like exercise-induced asthma, I guess. But I've always had that, so I just kind of thought, oh, well, that's just how you're supposed to feel whenever you're running or doing something. So that's kind of tough coming from a place where maybe you don't know the difference between pain and gains and all of those kind of things. So how do you, I guess to what you were saying a moment ago, like
I
starting slow.
Yeah. And I wait for the client, especially an older client and chronic pain client, because that's my specialty is chronic pain people or people in chronic pain. I wait for them to tell me, I think I can do a little more. And I kind of go at their rate. And from a results standpoint, I get results slower, but I'm okay with that because that means I get that person longer because they end up staying with me because I make exercise an enjoyable thing. They don't get anxiety. What a lot of trainers try to do, and I see it at commercial gyms all the time because I don't exercise at my own gym. I go to other places.
It's like not eating at your own restaurant.
Yeah,
right?
it's like working out at home. I never do it. But the trainer's goal is to get this person and crush them. And the next day, they're not going to be able to walk, especially younger people. A lot of people my age and my friends, they will get a trainer and they look young. They look like they're in shape, but they're actually pretty broken and weak. And trainers just crush you on day one and they think that was a good thing. And now exercise is this like anxiety provoking activity that you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it. And I want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Like I want people to push themselves.
Where's that mentality even come from? Like that, I can't think of a scenario where it makes sense to just try to break somebody down like that.
I don't know. I know, but that's what I've been fighting in the industry for a really long time. Because I will argue with people online, not so much now, but they would argue with me about making things too easy for fat loss clients. They're like, oh, they're there for fat loss. You got to push them. You're not pushing the needle into the direction of results. But I think getting this person to not feel like they're dying is actually going to get me long-term results because they're going to stick around.
Well, it's a lifestyle change.
It is. It needs to be sustainable.
Yeah. And if you hate it the whole time or just learn to at least tolerate it, it's not going to be permanent. For sure.
And I know I get to the right level when I push the client and they say, oh my gosh, that was like a hard workout. I'm going to be sore tomorrow. And this is after a few weeks in with us. And then the next day they text me or they come into their next session and say, I wasn't sore. And then that right there, you're changing what you think was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So they thought they pushed themselves to the limit, but then they woke up the next day and recovered well. And they're like, oh, okay, so maybe that wasn't my limit.
Yeah.
Because people's perception is everything. And one thing that I ask on day one, after we do our easy yoga type exercises, I ask them on the scale of 1 to 10, how hard did I push you? 10, too hard, you're going to be sore tomorrow. 1, we've barely done anything.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to see people's perception of working hard because I get a lot of 8s and 9s. And in my head, I'm like, we did nothing.
Yeah.
But you just think you hit the limit. So that's when I say, okay, cool. So next time you come in, we're going to do the same thing.
You think they're also afraid of if they say a 3 that you're going to push to an 8?
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
With where
yeah, and
at.
if they're scared, like I'll baby you for a little bit. And once I feel like I've had enough hand holding and babying, then that's when I'll push the limits. But that's after investigating, why is this person not wanting to push? And a lot of times it's they're under recovering. They're not getting enough protein. Because when you strength train or exercise, you are creating damage to a degree of your muscles, which is normal. And so if you get enough protein, you're going to recover and adapt because the body is very adaptable.
Yeah.
You stress it and it recovers, it adapts to the stress that you're putting on.
Makes sense.
If you're not getting enough protein, the exercise may not ever feel easier. Like that 15 pounds just feels heavy week after week instead of actually getting easier and easier.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The other thing is people don't move enough outside of the gym. And in order for your body to adapt to exercise, it needs blood flow. It needs movement. So that's like real recovery. Most people think recovery days is I'm going to lie on the couch and not move at all. But really what you should do is move on your days off, walk, do low-level exercises to increase the adaptability of strength training.
Yeah, I just got a treadmill at home so I can do like 30
perfect.
minutes every morning. Sort of get the blood flowing, get the brain moving a little bit.
Yeah.
Before the family wakes up, you know.
That's what parents
nice.
have to do.
Yeah,
do it before everybody
fit
wakes
it in
up.
whenever you can. Why did we get to this place of thinking that running was going to lose weight for people? Where did that come from? Like, because now the discussion out there is like, well, it's actually better if you're just going to walk than to run for something like fat loss or something. So where do we get all these impressions that lifting weights is going to make you bulk up? Running is going to make you lose weight. Where does all this come from? Is it the media? Is it
I
more
don't know
sources?
specifically the running, but just like anything becomes a thing, a celebrity is promoting it, or someone's making money off of pushing an idea, and whoever funds the profit driven media, like, hey, I benefit if people believe this. For example, some people benefit if we believe protein is bad and meat is bad. So I'm going to give profit
Yeah.
driven media money for them to push plant-based products. So I don't know specifically where that idea came from of like running is good, we should just run a lot.
Yeah.
But a lot of our bad ideas come from celebrities, people making a profit.
Yeah. Yeah, that used to be my thought.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, because so many people think that, and I would just turn everywhere and you would see that.
Well, I was happy to
Go
find
run.
out that wasn't needed.
What's that? You were happy to find
Yeah,
out?
I was never a runner.
When did you find out?
Right in the beginning when I got into the industry. So
Okay.
I was very lucky that my first boss did what I'm doing now.
Okay.
So I didn't have to learn through my mistakes. I got into it with someone who did a lot of smart strength training. And he was really well known for taking all these marathon runners and moms who were working out 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. And they would come to the gym and say, I need to work out more because I'm doing all of this work and I'm not getting enough results.
Yeah.
And what he would end up doing is having them do less, which is really hard for people to get through that.
Right.
You should work out hard 3 days a week and an easy 2 to 3 times so that way you can recover.
Yeah. What's a good way to start if you've never actually done anything?
Anything?
Anything. I'm asking for Lance. He doesn't do much. He's doing like insanity and all sorts of other stuff right now. So it's funny.
Well,
He's being silly.
in like 3 weeks when my mindful movement product is out, that would be what people can start with. And
Okay.
so what mindful movement is, it's a 6-week course, 10 minutes a day, and it's basically strength training exercises broken down into low-level exercises that look like yoga, and they're at the level of a restorative yoga class. And so what that does is it teaches you to build tolerance in these positions. So if you're squatting, we're doing squats and mindful movement, but it's just a very easy level.
Right.
And so they do that for 6 weeks. So then you build tolerance, you get in the habit of doing something, you're getting blood flow, you're learning the cues and the lingo. So then the idea would be at the end of the 6 weeks, you're ready to start a strength training routine.
Got it.
But
So
whatever
it starts out with no equipment, no gear.
no equipment.
It's
Yeah, you
just
can do it at
right?
home
Okay.
through a video. And
Got it.
that's the goal would be you go through this, it increases your mindfulness because you're paying attention to your body. And the way that the way I started this was when people tried to cancel their session because they were in pain, because I have a lot of people in chronic pain and it's normal for people to flare up. They'd call me and say, hey, like my back flared up, I can't come work out. So to keep them in the gym, I would say, hey, but you can come in and just do the warm-up. Just do the warm-up. It will make it 3 times as long. And by the end of that session, they would come up to me and like shake my hand like, thank you, I feel so much better. And at the time I thought it was because of all the posture stuff. Like, oh, these exercises get you in a better posture and that's why they feel better and that's why they get out of pain. There might be some truth to that. The recent science on pain, posture doesn't really correlate to you having pain or not. A lot of people still believe that, oh, my back hurts because
You're pinching
something.
Okay.
That's the connection is not very strong anymore. Pain is influenced by many factors. But back then I did believe that. But then as I started learning more about mindfulness, as going through my own journey with mental health, I realized how important it was to be mindful and pay attention to your body and stop thinking about everything that's going on in your life and then hone in on you. And so I started reflecting on these sessions and I thought maybe it has nothing to do with posture and position, but I just made them meditate for 45 minutes. And then I tried yoga for the first time in 2018. That's when my mental health was at its lowest. And after 45 minutes, I realized why it was like a cult, because people love yoga. I mean, they are obsessed. And I never knew why, because yoga is not great for strength training. It's not making you stronger. It's not great for flexibility. And most people think that's what it's doing. But after going through it, I realized, oh, it's 45 minutes to an hour of just meditating. You're paying attention to your body. Your mind stops thinking of everything else, and you really hone in on yourself. But the problem with yoga is that you have to be flexible. You have to take cues well. So it's great for a certain type. Like I'm an ex-gymnast, ex-dancer, so I can do all these extreme moves. So I wanted to create something for my clients. So how can I get the yoga experience, the meditation experience into something more low level, something that people can follow, and get people prepared to strength training? And that's where Mindful Movement was born.
That's great. But it's frustrating too, because like you said, you had certain beliefs before. There was science that we all felt very strongly about. And then, I mean, science obviously is not perfect. It's the best at what we know today, hopefully. But it is kind of crazy in this social media first world, how many different talking points there are about the same subject and how much disagreement there is.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, how do I know what to believe? Do I believe that running is good? Do I believe running is bad? Because I got, two different people saying two different things. I don't know. So any advice on like finding advice in people in science that you can really trust?
Finding a person or people where you really trust them, and then develop your bias towards what they share, because it's impossible. Like you Google something and you'll get opposing views, or you'll get two people talking about the same study saying the opposite. Like this study proves that I'm right. And then the person who's on the other extreme is like, well, that study proves that I'm right. So you can really manipulate data and make it seem like it's biasing you.
Yeah, that's
when it
what's
could be the
frustrating though.
Yeah, I don't even know what to believe sometimes. We used to be able to look at
some of those things and go, yeah, okay, there's that study that says X, Y, Z. We all agree on that. But now, like you said, people
even
just manipulate it.
Following an ingredient or a recipe, I get overwhelmed. Like, oh, how to make pork this way. Oh, you need to do this or it's going to mess up. And then the next one I read, it's like, well, if you do this, it's not going well. And then I read the next one, I'm like, now I don't know, and I'm not going to make it.
Yeah. The
like,
steak goes in the oven first and then on the grill.
Exactly.
Or vice versa. Yeah.
I'm like, this is how people must feel when looking for information on health.
On anything, it feels like. Yeah. I mean, how many different TikToks need to be like the perfect way to make a steak, how to make the perfect whatever, and you watch it and you're like, this is upside down from the previous one I just watched. So at the end of the day, my takeaway is like, just do whatever you want. I mean, that's steak, so it's just food. It's obviously important, but it's not your health.
But when it comes to health, I would recommend finding a guide. And that's what I see myself and my business partner. We're the guides, because we are fitness experts. We are experts on the training floor and strength training. But health is influenced by many, many factors, not just fitness, not just nutrition. Your past experiences impact your health. Your mental health impacts your health. Your beliefs. Like, there's just so many things. So what Dave's my business partner, we see ourselves as guides. So we give people information, people they can trust, nutrition coaches that they can trust. So what I suggest for people is just find that guide, and find the guide who is getting the results that you want. So look at the Google reviews. It's not just, oh, John is a great trainer, he's really motivating. Like, find the Google reviews that give you stories. The people that are in your shoes now who are got the results that you want. And those people usually know what they're doing.
Well, and you said you specifically are looking for people that maybe are older or chronic pain. So looking for those kind of stories, right? That obviously makes sense.
Yeah.
What are some of the chronic disease or illnesses that people have? What are some frequent things?
Well, mostly chronic pain are the people that I deal with. And then a lot of people have autoimmune issues.
Okay.
So I have one lady now who has chronic fatigue, and she has some other type of issue where she can't get her heart rate above 90.
Wow.
which is very hard to work out if you can't get your
How do
heart
you
rate.
diagnose that? Like, you just go on a treadmill with a doctor and they're like, yeah, I don't know what's going on.
What's sad about her case is that she's been to many, many doctors. And at first, she didn't realize that it was chronic fatigue. But she would work out and have to sleep for 2 days.
Wow.
So she's gone to a doctor in Phoenix, doctor in New York. So people who have chronic or autoimmune issues, they really struggle getting the right type of help. And even with that, they will get looped into some woo-woo stuff and get like $2,000 worth of supplements.
Woo-woo stuff. I love it.
So even with them, like they really struggle finding the right help because conventional doctors sometimes are very dismissive and they don't look at the body as a whole. They just look at the disease. They just look at the problem.
Yeah.
But they don't ask about how their stress levels are, how their relationships are. Like
See, that's also the frustrating thing is so many doctors having the perception anyway of being in the back pocket of some pharmaceutical company or some device sales company, whatever, where they get a kickback. Or, I mean, I even know in my own experience, like you walk in with a doctor and it feels like you're getting dismissed, you know?
Oh, yeah.
They're like, oh, yeah, I've seen this before, XYZ here. It's like, you're not really listening. Or like my son had to go to the ER once because he had this big piece of wood in his leg. And they kept thinking that it was a tiny little, oh my gosh, what do you call it?
Splinter?
Yeah, splinter. Thanks. They thought it was a tiny little piece of wood. Said, just leave it alone. It'll fall out on its own. And I was like, I don't think you're understanding because you haven't even touched his leg yet. And so I had to get my hand on him, basically push like where it would go in. And you could see way over on the other side of his leg was the other end. I was like, this thing is that long in his leg. It's not a splinter. They were like, oh, yeah, okay. And this is a pediatric surgeon
crazy.
over at UK. Like, totally dismissive. And it's like, that's the level of healthcare that you get. For at the time, I think he was 2.5. It's like a 2.5-year-old just rolled into the ER and you won't even touch him. Like, that's wild. So anyway, just thinking like, you know, with all the things that people think with pharmaceutical companies and pills, and they're like against that. So they want to go natural. And then you have a lot of people that are like, how do you, it's like,
it's hard to find the balance.
Yeah. How do you find trust in any of this? You know, not just in the health part, but I mean, that's the great thing about the internet and social media specifically, just because of the real-time nature of it. But it's also really frustrating and difficult because it really clouds what we think we know.
Yeah, the trade-offs are real when it comes to having information. It's amazing that we can just access anything or have access to other people and find people like you. Like, it's amazing someone with a chronic disease that's rare can find a community online that are dealing with the same things because they can find what worked for them and have ideas. But what happens with that is that you just build an identity around your disease and you feel like that's just who you are. And there's so many things that you can really overcome. But I think with the internet, it's locking people into these categories. Like, I think everybody thinks they have ADHD now because of Instagram. And it's like, this is just who I am.
It's true.
And it's amazing that we can find things out, but we can't get locked in and identify with all these things and think that we can't change.
Yeah, the ADHD thing is like, that's a wild one, I think.
I mean, we have an Adderall shortage right now.
Is it because they can't keep up with demand, or is it?
I think so.
Or are they just keeping it low to create demand?
I think they can't keep up with demand.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But don't quote me on that one.
Yeah, I mean, some of the people I know that say they have ADHD, I'm like,
maybe you're addicted to your phone and you shouldn't look at social media for 8 hours.
I say this lightly, but also seriously, where it's like, what I'm witnessing from that person is it laziness? Is it an excuse to not do something because you go, oh, I just have this thing, that's why I don't do it. And that's an excuse not to fix it or work on it, when maybe it's not a medical problem, but it's just a behavior that you're not doing, you know? It's like, how do you tell the difference?
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. I've talked to plenty of people that are experts at this stuff, and I still don't
Yeah.
always feel convinced.
I think a lot of times is lack of skills. We lack the skill of paying attention. We lack the skill of carrying through with a task. And then it gets to the point where you just don't do it for so long that now that's your routine. And we lack the skills of doing something right away or giving up when it's hard. And that's one thing that I think the younger generation is being born into a generation that doesn't try hard. And it should feel overwhelming. Like going to New York, I remember I can't figure out the subway system. I can't, I'm just going to take a $89 Uber ride to the hotel. And I caught myself thinking, just like I couldn't figure out Profit First. Do you know Profit First?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like how to manage your money. I remember being really overwhelmed. Like, I can't figure this out. But I did it. I figured it out. And now it's easy. And then when I was at the subway station, I'm like, it's the same feeling. You can figure it out. Just slow down. And then I figured it out. And I think people lack that skill, especially the younger
It's uncomfortable.
People. It is, yeah.
And especially as you get older, there's more and more that you feel like you know and you fall in a routine of, or this is how I've always done this particular thing.
People
and it's hard to, whenever you're young, I mean, everything is new to you. So you're in a position to learn and push yourself and be uncomfortable. So, it's whoever's got that tolerance. They seem to be the ones to be able to fight against ADHD.
The book called Your Personality Isn't Permanent, which is
never heard of that.
Changed my life. Best book ever. Okay. Everybody should read it. They said that people who stick to a routine and are less spontaneous tend to be more closed-minded, and it makes a lot of sense. You get stuck in your routine. You get stuck doing the same thing over and over again. And people who tend to be more spontaneous tend to be more open-minded into changing. And the book was all about not identifying with your negative traits. Like for me, introvert, not good with people, not a good manager, too blunt, not a great person to work with. I used to really identify with those things. I can't just go into a room and talk to a stranger. And now when I tell people that, they're like, you were like that? And that book really changed. I'm like, I don't have to be this way. And I think we get locked into thinking this is just who I am.
I mean, to take that even further and blow that up, we do that as a society, right? People that are in a small town have small town think. You know everybody. The town kind of has its own personality because of who makes it up. And it's always interesting how whenever the small town kids go out to college and now they get exposed to people that don't look or think or talk like them, how they don't go back home because they're like, it's not an open-minded place. And it's funny to see that at different scales. The Profit First thing, by the way, remind me, because I know I've looked it up, but I haven't gone down the rabbit hole of like actually executing on that. But remind me what that is.
It's a way to manage your money in your business. And so you have multiple bank accounts. And then
that's right.
Either you can do it once a month, twice a month. Some people do it every single week. You take the money that came into your income account, so all the money that came in, and then you allocate all the money. So basically, in a nutshell, you give the money its purpose before you're stupid with it.
Yeah.
And if you have debt, tax account, So by the end, when we pay taxes, we have the money. It's not a surprise. Like, we need to put this. We need to save this much. It's just already there. When you have debt, you have a debt account. So all the extra money goes into that debt account. You pay off your debt. And then when you're done with debt, that turns into a profit account.
Makes sense.
And then every quarter you take it or split it if you have a partner.
Yeah. So are you a Dave Ramsey fan?
My business partner is. No, okay. I have not. I would have benefited from it.
I'm not.
I was really bad. Like, money burnt through my pocket.
Yeah.
For a really long time. And same thing with the business, which is why we accumulated so much debt. But through the Profit First account, we got out of debt in 2 years.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, money was not really a discussion in our house, which I know that's a pretty typical thing, it seems like. Which, obviously going to change that generationally for my kids, because it should be something people talk about.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're so afraid to talk about money.
Yeah, I tell
Especially
parents
with
all the time.
kids.
Like, explain to them how much you're paying for health insurance. Because I was 26, and my idea of health insurance was to go to my mom's house and grab her credit card and go
Yeah.
to the doctor. I had no idea what she was paying every month.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the bills were. It just got sent to her.
Or
So I
how to
always
decide, do I want PP or like
Yeah.
whatever all the different
I don't
things
even know
are.
the words.
Yeah, I'm blanking on them. But yeah, which things do you want?
Yeah, so I tell parents all the time, like, explain to your kids how much these things cost, because I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
And we didn't grow up super wealthy, but we were well off.
Yeah. I think there's too much protection of like, oh, well, that's not the kids' thing to think about. That's not their responsibility. And I think that's totally true given different ages. You know, if they're 2, well, yeah, duh. But I mean, if they're like 16, why in the world wouldn't you be talking about money? They're 2 years from being an adult. They're probably working and doing something with money. Why wouldn't you talk to them at 14 before they're 16 and getting that first job or something, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like that repetition. I can't think of words this morning. I don't know why. That repetition of like protecting kids and building that barrier, even though it might feel good to protect them from the world that they live in. Eventually they step into that world and they got to know. So they don't know how to talk to people now.
Yeah.
They don't know what conflict resolution really is, because, well, mommy and daddy would make the phone call.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
don't-
yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
all of that stuff.
I train the ex-fire chief,
Okay.
and she said that she would have parents call for, like, to deal with a problem. Like, your kid is an adult.
Yeah.
He's a firefighter.
Right.
We can't have the parent call here because a problem that they're having.
My 25-year-old son is a firefighter in your unit, and he's having a problem with this other person. Like, what? That doesn't.
Yeah, and we have a whole generation. So I forget why I was Googling this, but it's like how to evict your adult children. And there's an epidemic of kids living at home. And it was crazy. It's like my 35-year-old son will not move out, will not clean, will not pay rent. And anytime I ask him to help, he gets really mad at me. How can I kick him out? Or I have my 36-year-old daughter and 37-year-old son living at home and they don't help. Or one lady said, my 39-year-old daughter is living at home and she has an inheritance from her dad who died. She spends $700 on clothes every single day. She's living in a mess, will not clean up, leaves me to do all the laundry. I need to be able to kick her out. People were commenting back like, this is your problem.
This starts feeling like my dog keeps jumping on people, and I don't understand why. It's like, because the people are the problem, not the dog. Because the example that you're setting and all the behaviors that you're permitting to happen, that's why.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that just, I mean, as a parent, that's hard to balance. Like, what are you going to talk to your kids about? What are you going to protect them from? When is it appropriate to talk about certain things? I mean, there's a lot, but I feel like at the same time, people don't take parenting as a serious job sometimes, you know? They do whenever the kid's in trouble, but they don't on the proactive side, you know?
Yeah, teaching
Like-
them the skills that they will need when they're in trouble.
Or to prevent being in trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like teaching good behaviors and the conflict resolution so they're not fighting, or they are doing the right thing all the time. So you never have to feel like you need to intervene. You know, the opportunity is not even there because, well, it never happened.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, my sister's a perfect example. So I don't have kids. So I really admire parents because I really don't know how they do it. I really don't. But my sister, she puts so much effort into her kids. However, the culture in Guatemala, they live in California, but the culture in Guatemala is when you have a kid, someone moves in. Someone's helping you. So either a sister moves in, an aunt moves in, the grandma moves in. So they did have extra help. And that's, I think, important to say because then parents feel bad for not putting that much effort into teaching their kids skills, like emotional skills. But I was there 3 years ago. The girl was 4 and the boy was 7. And they're jumping on the trampoline. And then the girl tries to like push him off and they start fighting. I'm like, all right, I'm out. Like, I'm out. The kids are fighting. So she comes out and I was amazed. She like snapped her fingers and she was like, hey, Alexis, validate your sister's feelings. Why does she not want you on the trampoline? And he's like, ugh, why don't you want me on the trampoline? She's like, because when you're on the trampoline, I can't jump as high. And she's like, so validate her feelings. Validate that you understand why she doesn't want you on there. So he validated her. Then, Emma, let's come up with a compromise. Can you have 5 minutes alone on the trampoline and Alexis is going to sit on the edge? Then he can join you. So she repeats that. If I have 5 minutes and you sit there, then you can join me. And then they both agreed. And my mind was blown. So she walks away and she's jumping on the trampoline, but then she tries to push him off. Like, I don't want you to sit on the edge. And then she turns around and my sister's like, Emma, you can't go back on your word. You agreed. Okay. And then she starts jumping. And it was just crazy that she's teaching them how to regulate their emotions, validate someone's experience, which is something that adults learn at a late age.
I'm still learning that, honestly.
I'm going through it now.
Like, it's hard to sit there and where, depending on what the situation is, sometimes you just want to react and say, rather than, okay, what is that person giving me right now?
Yeah, what else could be going on?
Yeah. So it's hard.
Yeah.
Whatever, you didn't grow up that way or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I teach people now like how to have a curious mindset, how to validate someone's experience, but it was stuff that no one ever taught me growing up.
Yeah. I mean, I guess first you have to have something that like lets that enter your mind that's the thing you should even consider doing. And then you got to have some sort of catalyst to make you want to do it. Yeah. And then you got to have a plan on how to execute that. Yeah. And it's a whole series. That's hard.
And a process, lots of practice.
Yeah.
Role playing.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be intentional, like, because it's the opposite of what I want to do sometimes. You got to be very mindful of it. Yeah. And go, okay, here's how I would typically handle this. Here's probably how I should. And that's hard.
Yeah. And what I tell people is you have to practice. And that's why role playing, a lot of people hate role playing. And like as a team, like as in a business group or just role playing with a coach on how to have a better conversation, a lot of people think it's a waste of time because it's not real. But you have to get the reps in and the practice, because if you don't practice when tensions are high, you're just going to do what you used to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's practice, like you said, like any other skill set, whatever. Yeah. How did you get into health and wellness as a whole? Where'd that come from?
Complete accident.
Okay.
I was not into it. I felt like I was fat. I had failed out of college. I think I was 18 or 19, 18. And my mom mentioned a personal training school that was opening up in town, and she knew the owner. And I wasn't interested in getting people in shape. I was interested in getting myself in shape because I didn't like myself. And I had grown up with bulimia, because when I moved here from Guatemala, I was super, super skinny. I was a professional gymnast. And then I moved here and gained weight. Never got fat, but I didn't like myself. So when she mentioned this personal training school, I saw it as an opportunity to get in shape. And my mom was willing to pay for it. So I started the school. The program wasn't great, but I did get connected to this guy in Indianapolis. His name was Mike Robertson. And he introduced me to a way of strength training that was not just rah, like, good job, you can do it, because that wasn't my personality. I was more analytical. And when I saw him present at the seminar, I remember thinking, that's what I want to do, because he's smart. He doesn't have this like bubbly, preppy personality like I thought fitness trainers had to have. He is like using science and posture to get people better and get people stronger. So when I was 19, I went to the seminar, chugged 2 glasses of wine, and built up the courage to go meet him. I'm like, I want to be just like you. And he invited me to dinner, and I got to meet this big network of people that I still know and still hang out with. Yeah, and that's how I got started. Yeah, by accident.
So did that map to how you thought as an athlete yourself, being analytical and science based or technically based?
I think I like the analytical side of it because I like fixing things. I
Okay.
like seeing a problem and finding a solution. And instead of what I saw personal training as, you're just a motivator. You
Hmm.
just get people to move. But when I saw that, oh, this is a problem and this is how to fix it, and here's a process of how to fix it, that's what really drew me into
Yeah.
getting into it. And
Hmm.
when I got my first job here, I was still very quiet, huge introvert, couldn't even have a conversation with people.
Yeah.
And my boss told me I had to go serve at a restaurant if I wanted to keep my job. He's like, you're really good at like coaching people and you see the lines, like you have a skill, but no one can hear you.
Hmm.
So if you want to keep your
Because you
job,
were
I
literally
just
just talking quietly because
I
you're,
was shy.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm very awkward. I just didn't have the skills of having a conversation with people.
So how have you overcome being an introvert?
Just years of work and exposure and changing my mindset on things.
Okay. I
Becoming more
mean,
confident.
it's got to be tough. I mean, it's one thing to know, like, or put yourself in a position that forces you to be an extrovert. But how in the world do you change that mindset to actually do it? You know what I mean?
I think I saw it as a skill,
Okay.
like dating or going into a party where you don't know anybody and small talk with everybody. Like if it's something that you're not used to, of course it's going to feel hard. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. So
Yeah.
just seeing socializing as a skill that I just didn't have practice. I just hung out with the same people, never really put myself in positions where I met new people.
Hmm.
So just a ton of practice. And with training, I get a ton of practice talking to people.
Yeah.
And I did go work at Solgood for a year, and that helped. And I think the other thing that helped me with training was realizing that the best speakers and presenters were introverts, because it's totally different
Yeah.
speaking at people and speaking with someone.
Yeah.
So I developed the skill of speaking at people by presenting and presenting a class, because even on the training floor we are having conversations, but I would say 80% of that is still me presenting information, me talking, not having a deep connection and conversation with someone.
Yeah.
And so I became more confident in that way. And then over time, I started developing the skills of speaking with people.
Well, I think it's interesting because before we started, you were like, there might be like a 10-second break between your question and my answer. And that hasn't happened once.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So is that because you were anticipating maybe being caught off guard or
Maybe a question
hard
that,
to answer?
yeah.
Or
And I
okay.
just like thinking about it instead of
Okay.
quickly answering. And I thought it was weird. I mean, it probably is still weird. But then someone sent me a clip of Elon Musk doing it on the Joe Rogan podcast, where he's just
Or
thinking.
taking a, oh yeah.
Yeah, just thinking through the answer. Or Steve Jobs did the same thing of just silent for 30 seconds and then answering. I'm like, oh, so I'm just thinking through my answer.
Yeah.
And normally when I am doing that, it's when I'm talking about technical things. So it's usually a podcast for physical therapists and trainers where it needs to be a little more technical. So that's usually when I
Yeah.
have the long pauses, where someone will ask me a question and I'll just,
Yeah. I think that's actually kind of funny because there's that perception that you got to talk fast, you have to answer quickly, and you have to be thorough with the answer. And that's the only way to be an expert or present yourself as one. And I've always kind of found that the people that take those breaks and they're thoughtful, they're a little bit slower, they seem to be the ones that are like a Steve Jobs or a Elon Musk that are really leading in a whole generation of people.
yeah. And it's the
It's pretty
people that
wild.
say, could be a lot of things. It's hard to say. We're not really sure, like, especially when
Yeah.
it comes to pain, because when it comes to pain, we really are not sure. It could be a lot of things. It's hard to say, but it's the people who are like, oh, yeah, it's your rib that's this, and that. Those are the people you should not listen to. It's the
Yeah.
people who are like,
Because they
"It's not just-"
definitively.
yeah. And in pain is influenced by so many factors that we really don't know.
Yeah.
So the best people say, we don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Could be a lot of things.
Which, isn't that kind of interesting? Because it's like you want to have the confidence in the person that's the expert at the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the confidence is actually the lack of confidence in the answer.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, well, this has been great. I really appreciate all of your time. Talk to me about the program one more time and what it's called and when does it launch?
Oh, my mindful movement
Yeah.
app?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it will be launching in hopefully less than 3 weeks.
Okay.
It's all done. It just needs to be put into the program.
And where do we find it?
And that will be on my website, enhancinglifegym.com.
Okay.
And so there'll be a link to that. And it will be a 6-week program, 10 minutes a day. And the goal is it's a way for you to start paying attention to your body. Because when it comes to strength training or any exercise, you should be able to pay attention. But most people are way too distracted. They're in their head thinking of all the things that they need to do. So this is a great way to start meditating without just sitting still, because moving your body makes it a lot easier for you to be present. So it's a great way to start a meditation practice. And then it's also a great way to learn the basics of strength training, because those are the moves we use because of our bias of strength training. So it's going to be a good base to learn all the moves, build some tolerance in your body. So when you go to the gym, it's not brand new and you're less likely to hurt yourself.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
This was fun.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Lexington Business Show. Go right now, rate and review the podcast. It's how we grow and thrive and how we get more listeners and get to do a lot more cool stuff here on the show. Thank you.